Welcome. Tonight's story is one of humility, healing, and quiet transformation, the kind that doesn't come with spectacle or show, but through obedience, even when it doesn't make sense. It's the story of Naaman, a powerful commander, respected, feared, and proud, brought low by an illness no army could fight. But what begins with disease ends in deliverance. And between those 2 points, we find a path walked by many of us, a journey of pride laid down, of unexpected voices speaking truth, and of a simple act unlocking the miraculous. This is the story of Naaman healed, from 2 Kings chapter 5. So let your mind settle, and breathe deep. We're about to enter a world of ancient kings, dusty roads, and unexpected mercy. Naaman was a man of stature, a commander of the army of Aram, a mighty warrior, and a trusted servant of the king. He was victorious in battle, respected by his soldiers, feared by his enemies, and honored in the palace. But Naaman had a secret, one he carried beneath the shining armor and polished robes. A quiet shame, a quiet fear. He had leprosy, the disease that isolated, that marked its victims, that slowly, cruelly, took life from the edges inward. No position could protect him. No wealth could buy a cure. No sword could fight this enemy. And so, Naaman, the powerful, was powerless. But hope can come from unexpected places. In Naaman's household, among his many possessions and servants, lived a young Israelite girl, taken captive during one of Aram's raids. A girl removed from her home, from her family, from everything familiar. Yet, in that foreign land, she noticed Naaman. She saw his condition, and she spoke. She didn't mock him. She didn't stay silent. Instead, she went to Naaman's wife and said something extraordinary. "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria. He would cure him of his leprosy." A whisper of hope. From a girl who had every reason to remain bitter, she offered compassion. The message reached Naaman, and something stirred in him, enough that he chose to act. The journey to Israel. Naaman went to his king, explained the girl's words, and the king, eager to see his commander healed, gave permission. More than that, he sent a letter to the king of Israel. Along with the letter, Naaman took gifts, a fortune in silver and gold, and 10 sets of fine clothing. He set out across the land, not as a conqueror this time, but as a man in need. And when he arrived in Israel and delivered the king's letter, it caused a stir. The king of Israel read the message. "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of his leprosy." And the king tore his robes in alarm. "Am I God?" he cried. "Can I kill and bring back to life?" To him, this seemed like a trap, a provocation for war. Because no man could cure leprosy, not by their own power. But there was a prophet in the land, a man of God named Elisha. And when Elisha heard the news that the king was in distress, and that Naaman had come, he sent a message. "Why have you torn your robes? Send the man to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman turned his chariot and rode toward Elisha's home. Naaman's arrival at Elisha's house was no quiet affair. Chariots rumbled, horses snorted, servants gathered the lavish gifts, silver, gold, fine garments. And Naaman himself stood tall, cloaked in pride, armor, and hope. He had come to be healed. But he had also come expecting a performance. Surely the prophet would emerge in dramatic fashion, call upon the name of his God with passion and ritual, wave his hand over the diseased skin, proclaim a cure, something worthy of a man like Naaman. But what he got was none of that. Elisha didn't even come to the door. He sent a messenger, a servant. And the message was simple. "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." The words were clear. But to Naaman, they were offensive. A river? A foreign river? No ceremony? No acknowledgement? Naaman's face flushed red, not from illness, but insult. He turned away in fury. I thought he would surely come out to me, he said bitterly. Stand and call on the name of the Lord his God. Wave his hand over the spot and cure me. His pride, built over years of victory and honor, rebelled. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? He shouted. Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed? And with that, he stormed off. A commander once more. But this time, commanding his own destruction. But again, just like before, it was not the powerful who brought clarity. It was the servants. They approached him gently, with respect, but with courage. My father, they said, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more, then, when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? Naaman stopped. The words pierced deeper than pride. They were right. If Elisha had demanded something heroic, a climb, a battle, a sacrifice, Naaman would have rushed to do it. But instead, he had been asked to obey, to humble himself, to trust the word of a foreign prophet, and to step into the muddy waters of a foreign river. Could healing really be that simple? Could surrender truly lead to restoration? Naaman paused, then turned his horse around. The Jordan River was not glamorous. It was not grand. Its waters were brown with silt. Its flow, modest. But it was the place God had chosen. Naaman dismounted, removed his armor, his layers of identity and pride, his badges of rank, his cloak of honor, and beneath it all, pale skin marked with disease. He stepped into the water. One step, then another. Cool water rising around him. Onlookers stood silent, his servants watching, the Jordan receiving him with indifference. He dipped once, then again, twice, 3 times, 4. Nothing changed. Not yet. 5, 6. Still the same. The disease clinging. The shame exposed. But then, the 7th time. He dipped. And rose. And when he looked down, he was clean. His flesh was restored. Like that of a young boy. Smooth. Whole. Alive. And more than his skin, his heart was changed. The man who had demanded recognition, who had stormed off in anger, who had mocked the Jordan, now stood in silent awe. Restored. He looked to his servants. They stared back, wide-eyed. And together they knew something holy had happened. Not through spectacle, not through gold, but through surrender. Naaman emerged from the Jordan changed. Not just healed, but transformed. His skin was smooth, yes, but something deeper had been cleansed. The anger had left his eyes. The pride had quieted in his heart. He mounted his horse again, slower this time, more thoughtful. And he turned back toward Elisha's home. Not with entitlement, not with demands, but with gratitude, with reverence, with a heart humbled by mercy. And this time, Elisha came out to meet him. Naaman stood before the prophet and said something remarkable, something that echoed beyond his own healing. Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. He had entered this land with leprosy and uncertainty. He now stood healed and full of conviction. And so he offered gifts, the silver, the gold, the fine clothes. Not as payment, but as thanks. But Elisha refused. Firmly. As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing. Naaman urged him again. Elisha remained still. He would not profit from a miracle. He would not risk twisting God's power into currency. Naaman understood, and he did not press further. But then, Naaman made an unusual request. "If you will not accept a gift," he said, "please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry." Dirt? Why dirt? Because in his mind, the land of Israel was now holy. This was the place where he had met the true and living God. And he wanted to take a piece of it home, to worship on it, to remember, to honor the moment and the God who had touched him. He even made a confession, a humble admission of the life he would return to. "Your servant will never again make burnt offerings or sacrifices to any other god but the Lord. But when my master enters the temple of Rimmon to bow down and he is leaning on my arm, and I have to bow there also, may the Lord forgive your servant for this." It was not an excuse. It was a plea for mercy. He had been healed. But he would return to a world that didn't know what he now knew. Elisha looked at him with calm, knowing eyes, and simply said, "Go in peace." Naaman rode away, lighter than ever. But not all hearts were clean that day. Elisha's servant, Gehazi, had watched the entire exchange. And something stirred in him, not gratitude, but greed. He couldn't understand why Elisha had refused the gifts. To him, it seemed foolish, wasteful. And so, driven by selfish desire, Gehazi ran after Naaman. He caught up with the caravan, breathless but smiling. "My master sent me to say," he lied, "2 young prophets have just come to visit. Could you give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing?" Naaman, still overflowing with generosity, agreed eagerly. "By all means, take 2 talents, he said. He even sent 2 servants to carry the silver and clothing back for Gehazi. They traveled a short distance, and Gehazi took the goods, hid them in his house, and dismissed the men. No one had seen. But God had. Gehazi returned to Elisha's house, calm on the outside. But his heart beat fast. The silver was hidden, the clothes tucked away. No one had seen him run. No one had heard the lie. He had what he wanted, but he had traded something greater to get it. As he stepped into the room, Elisha looked up. His expression was calm, too calm. "Where have you been, Gehazi?" the prophet asked. And Gehazi, still clinging to the lie, replied, "Your servant didn't go anywhere." A simple sentence. A small lie. But you can't lie to a man who walks with God. Elisha's voice, though gentle, cut deep. "Was not my spirit with you when the man got down from his chariot to meet you?" Gehazi's face paled. He said nothing. He didn't have to. Elisha continued, "Is this the time to take money or to accept clothes, or olive groves and vineyards, or flocks and herds, or male and female servants?" He wasn't just naming what Gehazi took. He was naming what Gehazi wanted. The deeper disease of the heart. The greed. The ambition. The selfishness that had no place in the ministry of God. And then came the judgment. Not out of rage. Not out of spite. But as a sobering consequence. Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and to your descendants forever. And just like that, the healing that had been given to one was now placed upon another. Gehazi turned and walked away from Elisha's presence. His skin, once whole, was now white with disease. Not because God was cruel, but because the blessings of God are never to be manipulated. What had come through humility was now lost through deception. Naaman, the foreign commander, had come to Israel a proud man and left restored and reverent. Gehazi, the servant of a prophet, had stood close to the things of God and yet left cursed, not because of ignorance, but because of dishonesty. One obeyed. One manipulated. One received freely. The other stole quietly. And so this story, though miraculous in healing, ends on a somber note. Not to discourage, but to remind us that what matters most in the eyes of God is not status, or even position, but the heart. The humble are lifted, the deceitful fall. And through it all, God remains just and merciful. Naaman's story is often remembered for the miracle, a powerful man dipping into the muddy waters of the Jordan and emerging clean. But if you look closer, it's not just about skin made whole. It's about a heart made soft. It's about how a commander learned to listen to a servant. How a captive girl changed the course of a nation. And how obedience, even when it seemed foolish, became the path to healing. This is not the kind of story that celebrates grandeur. It celebrates quiet humility, unseen courage, the unseen ripple of faith in foreign lands. It began with a girl who had every reason to stay silent. She had been taken from her home, separated from her people, serving in the house of the very man who had led raids on her homeland. And yet, she spoke hope. Not revenge. Not resentment. She pointed Naaman toward the prophet in Samaria. And that small act of faith opened the door to everything that followed. Sometimes, the smallest voices bring the loudest change. Naaman didn't need a grand ceremony. He didn't need the Jordan to be cleaner than Damascus. He didn't need the prophet to come out waving his arms. He needed to let go. To lay aside expectations. To surrender control. He came for a cure, and he received one. But not before walking the path of humility. He obeyed when it seemed beneath him. And that act, dipping again and again into the muddy water, became holy. Sometimes healing doesn't come when we fight, but when we submit. But even amidst miracles, danger lurks. Not in the form of enemies on the battlefield, but in the corners of the heart. Gehazi, who had seen so much, was undone by a single decision. He traded truth for gain. He twisted grace into opportunity. And in doing so, he showed us something important. You can stand next to a miracle. You can witness power. You can serve a prophet. And still miss the heart of God. So what does this story say to us? It says, you don't need to be perfect to receive healing. You don't need to be a prophet to speak truth. You don't need a great stage or loud voice for God to use you. You just need to obey. To trust. To let go when everything in you wants to control. God's way may not always make sense, but his way always leads to life. Naaman didn't earn his healing. He obeyed. And that obedience, that quiet, difficult step, was enough. As we close this story tonight, I hope you carry its peace with you. Maybe you're walking your own journey right now. Maybe something in your life feels beyond your control. Maybe healing feels far away, distant like a river you've never stepped into. But let this remind you, God still sees. He still speaks. And sometimes, his invitation to you is not to strive, but to trust. There is beauty in the quiet obedience. There is strength in surrender. And yes, there is healing, even now. Sleep tonight with that peace. Let Naaman's story settle in your heart. Because what God did in those muddy waters, he can still do in you.